Revenge with Karen. The moment I realized I'd become invisible wasn't when they left my name off the press release. It was when the intern I trained, Jake, who still thought Docker was a boat, got invited to pitch my system architecture to the board while I sat in the hallway with a bagel and a badge that no longer unlocked anything above floor 3. 9 years. 9 years of duct taping legacy code into sleek interfaces, of smoothing over outages before the client noticed, building whole damn bridges just so someone else could walk across them in designer loafers and a LinkedIn post. That was Luminarix. That was my world. Quiet fixes, unclaimed wins, and the kind of silence that seeps into your bones. No one really remembers the architect, do they? They remember the ribbon cutting, the launch party, the guy who shows up in the blazer with buzzwords, not the woman who stayed up till 3 a.m. rewriting the authentication layers, because the security firm sent an intern with a Udemy cert. Not the woman who back-channeled 3 different vendors into cooperating just so the product didn't eat itself on rollout. Not the woman who smiled through quarterly reviews where the phrase team effort was just corporate for we'll give the raise to someone louder. They used to call me the ghost in the wires. Not to my face. Of course, I overheard it once. Some new VP thought it was funny. I suppose it was. I kept things running. I didn't complain. I got results. But somewhere along the way, I became part of the infrastructure. Familiar, quiet, unseen. Things started shifting when the board ousted our old CEO. Too cautious, they said. Too slow, they wanted energy. Innovation, so they brought in Eric. Mid-40s, Harvard tie. Chin like a reality show villain. Smelled like leather-bound books and gluten-free dominance. The kind of guy who says, let's disrupt unironically, and then fire someone who's been there since the servers had floppy disk backups. Eric didn't like legacies, especially quiet ones. He wanted new blood, agile thinkers, fast movers, people who could leverage momentum. I once watched him call a department-wide meeting to brainstorm how to use synergy as a verb. That was week 2. By week 4, I was getting copied on fewer emails. By week 6, he started referring to me as Rebecca from engineering, like I was a contractor or a recurring hallucination. And by week 10, I was asked to train his new golden retriever of a favorite, Jake, on the entire integration layer I'd built from scratch over 3 years. Jake asked if it was on Notion. I smiled, showed him the map, watched his pupils dilate. That's a lot. It's what makes the system work, I said. Don't worry, you'll have it memorized in, say, 18 months. He laughed. I didn't. But I want to say something real quick while you're here if you're still listening. These stories, they take time, they're real. They come from late nights, quiet rooms, and people like you who actually care. So if you're enjoying it even a little, hit that like button. Maybe subscribe. 95% of you don't, and honestly, it means the world to the folks telling these stories. Okay, that's it, back to the chaos. The funny thing is, I didn't hate Luminarix, not even at the end. I loved the bones of it, the quiet machinery. The way a million lines of logic could stack into something solid, reliable, like me. But when the whispers started, little things like Rebecca's retiring, right? Or she's not really client-facing, I knew what was coming. I've seen a company try to reinvent itself before. Always starts with buzzwords and ends with blood in the water. Still, I stayed. I stayed because I thought maybe, just maybe, my work would speak for itself, that they'd remember the outages I stopped, the clients I kept from bolting, the merger I made possible. But ghosts don't get plaques. They get purged. And that Friday at 4:43 p.m., in a meeting room named after a species of tree none of us could pronounce, I learned just how invisible I'd become. It was the kind of email that tries to sound casual but smells like cologne on a corpse. Rebecca, could you join us for a quick strategic discussion at 4:30 today? Boardroom C, confidential. No subject line, no agenda, just vibes and doom. I stared at it for a long minute, then looked at the time. 1:04 p.m. Enough time to polish up my latest architecture map, print the rollout trajectory for the Muranova merger, and fool that I was, highlight the areas where we could trim ops costs without gutting support. I even brought my good blazer. The one without the coffee stain on the cuff. Thought maybe they were finally giving me the reins. I know, hope's a hell of a drug. When I walked into Boardroom C, the first thing I noticed was the air. Tense, over-chilled, over-perfumed. The second thing I noticed was who wasn't there. No tech leads, no product heads. Just the board, and Eric was wearing that smug half-smile like it had been surgically attached. Rebecca, he said, standing up like he was about to offer me a medal. Thanks for making time. 3 of the board members nodded. The 4th was too busy pretending to read a printed agenda. The 5th, Marjorie, who once told me I had grace under pressure, refused to meet my eyes. I knew then. My stomach knew before my brain did. That quiet drop, instinctual flicker of the survival drive that whispers, "Get ready. This is the part where they take your name off the door." Eric cleared his throat. "We want to start by acknowledging the incredible work you've done. Over the last 9 years, you've really built the backbone of this place. Past tense, always a giveaway. Your dedication has been nothing short of heroic," he continued, "and it's important to us that you know how much we value your contributions." I nodded once, blink, but he smiled wider, like this was a TED talk and not an execution. But as we move into this new phase of Luminarix, especially with the visibility we're gaining from the Muranova opportunity, we've made the strategic decision to evolve our leadership structure. Make room for more agile, forward-facing voices. Agile, like I was a goddamn fax machine. Marjorie finally looked up. Her voice was brittle. "Your contract is being concluded, effective today, with full severance and, of course, references." I looked at her, then at the others. 4 stone faces. 1 cracked porcelain. I didn't ask for details, didn't plead, didn't even flinch. Just one question, effective immediately? Eric nodded like he was granting a favor. "Of course, we'll transition your current accounts carefully. You've left excellent documentation." Jake's already taking point on the integrations. Jake, the golden retriever in khakis, almost laughed. "Thank you," I said. I stood, smoothed my blazer, picked up my portfolio. No one stood with me. No one noticed my hand slip to the corner of the table, where a tiny black thumb drive waited under my notebook. I slid it into my pocket without ceremony. They thought they were inheriting my systems. They were inheriting a user manual with half the pages blank. "Best of luck," I said as I reached the door. Eric smiled like he'd just won something. I didn't slam the door, didn't cry in the elevator, just walked out into the fluorescent dusk of a parking garage that smelled like leaking coolant and betrayal. My car was parked in the same spot it always was. Slot B27, far from the executive wing, close to the dumpsters. I sat in the driver's seat, portfolio on my lap, thumb drive in my fist. They thought they'd written me out of the story. But the story wasn't theirs to write. Thing about silence is, if you sit with it long enough, it starts talking back. That night I didn't cry, didn't drink, didn't even bother with the old ritual of rage cleaning the kitchen while blasting Fiona Apple. I just came home, fed the cat, turned off every light but one, and opened the fireproof box under my bed. Inside it, 10 years of quiet insurance. Not paper, not passwords, not revenge show. No, what I had was better. I had the receipts of every architecture blueprint I'd ever drafted, every integration protocol I'd personally coded, every strategic memo I wrote for executives who slapped their names on the byline. But more than that, I had the clause. It was buried 3 pages deep in the pre-acquisition due diligence packet between Luminarix and Muranova Capital. Legalese with a pulse, provisions so subtle the board likely skimmed it right past their golf tee times. All core system continuity shall remain under the direct oversight of the originating architect of record, unless otherwise negotiated. Guess who wrote that sentence? Guess who negotiated it? 6 months ago, a Muranova spinout, Ardent Labs, was about to tank from a 0-day exploit that their in-house cloud transformation evangelist failed to detect. We're losing 4,000 users an hour. Arjun, their CTO, called me at 2 a.m. on a hunch. We'd met at a fintech roundtable where I solved a scaling problem on the back of a napkin. He remembered. I patched Ardent in 5 hours. No press, no headlines. I asked for no credit, just one thing: if Luminarix ever talked merger, I wanted oversight. Not title, not stock, just control. He said yes. While Eric was out posing in his tailored suits and linked in soliloquies about future readiness, I was crafting the very foundations of the deal they thought they'd engineered. I wasn't part of their narrative. I was the conditional variable they forgot to check. As I scrolled through the files, the shock started to dissipate. What settled in its place wasn't peace. It was precision. I pulled out a yellow legal pad, kind I'd used before Luminarix went fully digital, and forgot how to think without a template. At the top, I wrote, Merger Dependencies Rebecca S. Under that, Integration Schema, 87% owned personally, see dev logs, Authentication Protocol, not yet transferred to shared repo, client-side test suite. Last live build routed through my token. Clause 14.3b architectural continuity clause still valid. Each check mark was a heartbeat. Steady. Cold. I checked the time. 9:46 p.m. Picked up my phone. First call Arjun. He picked up on the second ring. I heard, he said. You still want Luminarix? I asked. That depends, he said. You still steering the ship, not according to them, then it's not Luminarix anymore. Second call, Linda from HR. She answered with a whisper. They already deleted your name from the org chart. Good, I said. Let them believe their own fiction. Third call, myself, voicemail. I left a message just so I could hear it out loud. They made their move. Now it's our turn. Outside, the streetlight flickered. My cat stared at me like she knew something was coming. She wasn't wrong. I didn't sleep. I didn't need to. I had clarity now. And clarity, like revenge, is best deployed cold. It started with a Zoom call that wasn't on the calendar. 1 year ago, almost to the day, got a late-night message on Signal from a number I didn't recognize. No greeting. Just a line of pure panic. If we don't patch this vulnerability in 90 minutes, we're cooked. Ardent Labs, please. Most people would have reported it, or ignored it, me. I put down my fork, logged into a clean VM, and started pulling threads. Turns out Ardent, one of Murinova Capital's sexier, high-profile portfolio startups, rolled out a new user auth gateway with custom logic. Big mistake. Their devs wrote it like they'd Googled how to break your own software in under 6 steps. If exploited, it would have let anyone overwrite admin privileges with a simple payload tweak. It wasn't just a hole, it was a damn skylight into their entire system. Arjun, their CTO, joined the call 10 minutes later, hair disheveled, voice raw. Are you the Rebecca from Luminarix? He asked. I'm not here as Rebecca from anywhere, I said. I'm just here to fix this. I stayed on the call with his team until sunrise. Rebuilt their auth tree, rewired the logic gate, wrote a new kill switch protocol. No one else saw it, no one else knew. When it was done, he offered me anything. Bonus, name drop, job. I gave him one line, if Luminarix ever sells and you're the buyer, I want a say in how it's handled. He nodded. Done. Didn't speak again for 7 months. Now, a year later, my name was being erased like it had never mattered. Linda called me from her personal cell, her voice tight. I thought you should know they're pulling your author tags from the doc archives. They're rewriting my commits. They say it's to unify branding, but yeah, it's getting messy. Let them, I said. She paused. Rebecca, they're retroactively assigning Jake to half your systems. He's acting lead architect now. I nearly laughed. Jake couldn't architect a PowerPoint without an anxiety nosebleed, but he was presentable. He said pivot and value add with enough pep to fool a boardroom. Linda exhaled into the phone. They're doing it fast. Feels like they're trying to legally reposition the tech stack, make it look like you were never a dependency. I walked to my window, looked out over the skyline, lights blinking like Morse code warnings. Good, I said. Let them believe the illusion. Not going to stop them. I don't need to. Because here's the truth about illusions. They only work if no one asks the right questions. And I'd already made sure Murinova would. Inside Luminarix, chaos was blooming like mold in a flooded basement. Project managers were suddenly rerouting internal tickets, asking who owns this now. Devs were noticing that Jake's GitHub looked like a Jackson Pollock painting of unresolved conflicts and bad merges. Clients were emailing support with subject lines like, "Where's Rebecca?" and "Why is our API down since Friday?" But the board kept smiling, kept forward-facing. Eric posted a selfie from the executive lounge that Monday, captioned, "Honored to lead this incredible team into the next era. Let's get to work." Meanwhile, the internal Slack channels started turning feral. I had a backdoor view. Linda sent me screenshots every few hours. Has anyone seen the May integration protocol? Who took over Rebecca's cloud keys? Client from Zurich asking for direct callback from that lady who fixed our rollout last year. Anyone know who that is? The answer, of course, was no one. No one knew how any of it really worked except me, because they never bothered to ask. They just assumed the system ran itself. Linda messaged again that night. "Are you coming back?" I replied simply, "No, I'm not walking back in. I'm walking over." Across the street, Murinova was warming up, and I was done saving people who wouldn't even credit me with the oxygen I gave them. Monday morning, 7:52 a.m. The sunlight hit the Luminarix tower like a slow slap, one of those bright, brittle fall mornings where everything looks clean and nothing actually is. Across the street, I watched a delivery guy in a wrinkled polo wheel a cart of champagne cases into the main lobby. Dom Perignon, 6 bottles. No expense spared when you're about to screw yourself in style. Inside Boardroom A, I knew exactly what was happening. The board was laying out their victory lap deck, that PowerPoint monstrosity Eric had been building with the design team all weekend, full of buzzwords, market projections, and placeholder graphs that still read "Insert Rebecca data here." I'd seen a leaked version. They'd filled in the blanks with guesswork and glitter. Could practically hear Eric rehearsing his opener. At Luminarix, we believe in disruption, agility, and leadership that's not afraid to shed the past. Translation: we cut out the quiet lady who made all this possible and replaced her with a frat intern who thinks Kubernetes is a Marvel villain. I sipped my coffee slowly. Vanilla oat milk latte, my one indulgence. Then I turned, walked 3 doors down into a coworking hub called the Grid. Clean white walls, startup logos slapped on glass, someone's dog asleep under a standing desk. At the front desk, the community manager looked up. "Rebecca," I nodded. She handed me a black lanyard and a badge that simply read, "Murinova Contractor Access Executive Tier. Your guest is already waiting in Pod 4. Pod 4, far end. Corner glass cube. The walls were paper thin, but the secrets were steel." Arjun stood when I walked in. Same messy hair. Same calm eyes, except this time he wasn't frazzled. He was energized, like he'd just bought the keys to the kingdom and was ready to burn the locks. "I believe," he said, handing me the badge himself now, "this is yours." I took it, clipped it on, didn't smile. "You're leading the call," he added. "No second thoughts," he shook his head. "They had 6 months to show us who mattered. Only one of you returned our calls at 2 a.m. Only one of you fixed a collapse before it made headlines. Only one of you built a system that could scale across 5 subsidiaries without needing another 50 million in rework." He paused. "And only one of you included a clause that made this meeting possible." We sat down. I plugged in my laptop, loaded the call sheet. 2 screens. One would show me the board's video feed, expensive suits, performative nodding, that champagne just off frame. The other would give me control of the system logs. "You want me to play nice?" I asked. Arjun smiled. "I want you to be honest. Honesty gets you fired. In their world, maybe. In ours, it gets you equity." 8:52 a.m. The waiting room filled. The Luminarix board connected early. All 5 members seated, backs straight, smiles loaded. Eric wore a fresh navy suit, the kind that screams I own 3 vests and a startup graveyard. He looked tan, probably from the rooftop golf simulator. "Good morning," he said, all teeth. "Thank you for joining us." "We're thrilled to," his voice cut off as Arjun's window appeared on their screen. Mine followed right behind. Their faces froze like a screenshot gone wrong. Eric blinked. "Rebecca," I nodded once. "Hello, Eric. Why is..." He turned to someone off camera, clearly mouthing, "Why is she here?" Arjun spoke calmly. "Rebecca is the acting lead consultant for this transaction. Per clause 14.3b of the pre-close agreement, oversight is a required component of deal validity." Someone on the board cleared their throat. Another leaned back like he'd just been told his yacht was on fire. Eric tried to recover. "We were under the impression," Arjun interrupted, "that you could erase the architect and still keep the building." He didn't say it cruelly. He said it like an architect himself, correcting a blueprint, not making a scene. I clicked my mic on. "Don't worry, I'll keep it brief. Assume you all have champagne chilling." No answer. Just 5 faces realizing they were about to present someone else's work without the person who built it. 8:59 a.m. The final countdown. Arjun nodded toward me one last time. "Your call, Rebecca," and I clicked join meeting. 9 a.m. exactly. The call opened like a corporate opera, bright smiles, suits too clean, and voices tuned just above condescension. Eric led the charge, of course. His camera framed perfectly. Award plaques in the background, shirt crisp, hair coiffed like a campaign ad. "We'd like to begin by reiterating how honored we are to be entering this partnership with Murinova Capital," he began, teeth shining like they'd been buffed by interns. "Luminarix has always been about transformation, and we believe this merger is the next logical evolution." He was playing the role of visionary, every syllable dipped in self-congratulation. The board nodded like synchronized bobbleheads. Slide deck shared, buzzwords stacked, scalable innovation, cloud-native evolution, strategic acceleration, not one word about architecture, not one mention of who actually built the scaffolding holding all of this together. I stayed off camera, just watching, listening. Arjun, to his credit, said nothing. He let them perform. 5 minutes in, one of Murinova's partners, Lena, a precise woman with a voice like cold metal, unmuted. "Appreciate the overview," she said. We have a few technical questions about the integration layer, specifically the core API schema and identity management. Could we hear directly from Rebecca? The silence that followed didn't just land, it splintered. Eric blinked first. Well, unfortunately, Rebecca is no longer with Luminarix. A pause. Then Alina, still polite, asked why not. She's transitioned out, he said, like he was talking about a software patch, not a human being. Marjorie, trying to do damage control, leaned forward. But rest assured, all her work has been documented, and we've successfully redistributed the responsibilities across our engineering team. We're confident that, let me stop you there, Alina said. Her tone didn't shift. If anything, it cooled. Our offer, she continued, was contingent on the continued oversight of the originating architect. That clause was not optional. We're aware, Eric said quickly. But that clause can be no, Arjun cut in. Calm, direct, final, it can't. Rebecca, he said, turning slightly in his chair, would you like to say anything? And that's when I turned on my camera. It was almost funny, watching their eyes shift. Eric's face tightened like someone had slapped him with a frozen fish. Marjorie went pale. The others looked like a PowerPoint had just grown fangs. I didn't speak immediately. I let the pause bloom. Let them feel the mistake in the air. Then I smiled. Barely. I designed the full-stack architecture behind every integration point in this merger. I negotiated clause 14.3b with Arjun after resolving Ardent Labs' failure last year. Also architected the resiliency layer that's currently preventing your client data from being exposed every time your golden boy merges code without a linter. I leaned forward slightly. You removed me from the project without understanding what I controlled. You assumed documentation equals competence. You assumed I was optional. Silence. Then Alina nodded once. Thank you, Rebecca. That confirms what we needed. She turned her gaze back to the board. In light of this misalignment and the critical personnel discrepancy, Murinova Capital is formally withdrawing its acquisition proposal. Effective immediately. Eric made a noise, something between a gasp and a swallowed curse. We can rectify this, he stammered. Let's talk offline. Rebecca doesn't know, Alina said. Her voice dropped to something sharper. You fired the foundation and kept the paint. Click. Her camera shut off. Then Arjun's. Then the rest of the Murinova team. Call ended itself. Just like that. What followed was the most beautiful sound I've ever heard. 5 board members sitting in stunned, sweating silence. No fallback. No PR script. No champagne pop. Just static and me? I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just stared at the black screen and felt the pressure that had lived in my chest for 9 years finally start to lift. Justice doesn't always arrive with sirens. Sometimes it just arrives on mute, after you've pressed leave meeting. It didn't take long, 42 minutes to be exact. That's how fast the headline dropped across every trade publication from TechWire to Capital Pulse. $600M merger collapses after architect's exit, Murinova pulls out. The phrasing was brutal, not due to restructuring, not deal renegotiated. No, it was surgical. After architect's exit, not CEO, not board, architect. They finally remembered my name, just in time to eat it. The market didn't wait either. Luminarix stock took a nosedive like it was strapped to a cinder block. I watched it fall in real time on a little finance app as I sat by the cafe window across from their office, sipping a fresh espresso, the foam still humming from the pour. The ticker blinked red, -12%, -18%, and the circuit breaker tripped and froze it at -24% before the panic could start a fire. My phone started buzzing like it owed someone money. First, Slack messages from ex-coworkers I hadn't spoken to in years. Hey, are you okay? Just saw the news, Rebecca. Holy SHT. Was that you? No pressure, but if you're available, we'd love to talk about a possible lead architect role. Then came the emails. Quick check-in, just touching base, opportunity you might find interesting. Even LinkedIn, the stale break room of professional networking, had a pulse. My inbox filled with just circling back messages from firms who'd ghosted me when I applied quietly 2 years ago. Now, they were offering relocation packages and private jets for interviews. It was like watching a funeral procession where I was the only one alive and holding a microphone. The one message that mattered came quietly. Encrypted, direct, no subject line. A simple confirmation from Murinova's legal team. Wire transfer complete. Advance retainer, $140,000. Contract position, lead strategic architect. Credit, full public attribution required. Attached, a non-disclosure for what came next, and a note in Arjun's handwriting scanned at the bottom. No more back rooms. We build in daylight now. I sat back. Let it wash over me. Not joy, not vengeance, just clarity. Like a fog had finally lifted, and underneath it was a horizon I hadn't seen in years. My phone rang again. This time, it was a number I knew by heart, the Luminarix board line. I let it ring, watched it light up like a begging dog at the back door. The call ended. A second later, voicemail. Didn't listen. Then another. Then another. All of them stacked like little bricks of desperation. I could imagine the conversations in their boardroom, Eric yelling, someone pacing, Marjorie probably whispering maybe we made a mistake, like it was a spell that could undo the collapse. But I wasn't their mistake. I was their exit plan, the one they threw out thinking the bridge would hold without its beams. Third call, straight to voicemail. They were getting nervous now. I turned my phone face down, tipped the barista, walked out of the cafe with the sun at my back and 1,000 quiet war drums in my chest. The street smelled like burned coffee and someone else's consequences. They could keep calling. I was done answering doors that led back to cages. The email came in at 10:41 that night, long after the champagne had gone warm and the crisis PR firms had begun their 48-hour billing cycles. Subject line, thinking about next steps, from Marjorie W. at Luminarix Corp.com. I almost didn't open it. I hovered my finger over the delete key, ready to send it straight to the graveyard of unread corporate apologies. But something in me wanted to see how far the delusion had stretched. It opened with soft nostalgia. Rebecca, been reflecting a lot on the journey we've all shared. The kind of opener people use when they want to pretend their memory is rosier than their behavior. Then came the spin. It's clear that the transition was handled poorly. We were misled by our own assumptions and timing. It's not lost on us how central you've been to the success of this company. I skimmed faster. She wasn't writing to apologize. She was writing to negotiate. Perhaps there's still a way forward, a fresh start. Be open to exploring a consultant arrangement, something fluid and mutually beneficial. Maybe we can find a path back for you. There it was, a path back, as if I'd taken a wrong turn. As if the exit I made wasn't a door kicked open with quiet precision, but some emotional misfire I could now be coaxed to undo. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then, without hesitation, I hit reply. No greeting, no sign-off, just one line, you made your path. I'll stay on mine. Sent, delivered, closed. There was no giddy rush afterward. No fist pump, no dramatic stare into the middle distance. Just silence, the kind that doesn't echo anymore. I closed my laptop and walked out onto the balcony. The city below hummed in a language I finally understood, movement without noise, power without a podium. The soft satisfaction of knowing I no longer owed anyone anything. The temptation to relish their downfall had faded, were falling on their own, tripping over the systems they never bothered to learn, scrambling to rewrite histories that had already gone to print. But I wasn't waiting around to see how it ended. I had no more time to lend their collapse. From the balcony, I could just make out the outline of the Luminarix building. Still lit, still trying to look like business as usual. It didn't bother me anymore. Let them sit under fluorescent lies while their foundation cracks beneath them. Let them hire overpriced consultants who'd need a month just to understand what I wrote in a weekend. I was out and clean. And for the first time in nearly a decade, I felt light. No bitterness, no scorekeeping, just the quiet relief of not being in a room where you have to justify your own worth. That's the thing no one tells you about justice. It doesn't always look like a fireball. Sometimes, it's just the absence of noise when you shut the door behind you. The city was barely awake when I passed the Luminarix building one last time. 6:12 a.m. Early enough for the air to bite a little, for the sky to smear itself in bruised pinks and reluctant gold. The kind of morning that makes promises it doesn't have to keep. I held my coffee close, black, scalding, real, and there they were. Through the massive glass panels of the lobby, chaos in tailored suits. Eric stood near the reception desk, tie askew, waving his arms like he was swatting invisible bees. One of the board members, Curtis, I think, was talking to a lawyer who looked far too awake for that hour, which told me everything I needed to know. Marjorie sat on the edge of a leather chair, hunched over a laptop, eyes darting like a trapped animal. I didn't slow down. I didn't smile. Let them have their panic. Let them feel what it's like when the floor shifts beneath you and you realize too late that you built your empire on borrowed scaffolding. The doorman, old guy named Frank, used to slip me mints during late-night sprints, saw me through the glass. He gave the smallest nod. I gave it back. That was enough. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't need to check it. I already knew who it was. Still, I pulled it out and read the message. Arjun, you up for building something better? I stopped walking. The light changed, red to white on the crosswalk, and I didn't move. I looked up. The sunrise had broken clean over the skyline. Not a metaphor, not a plot point. Just the real damn sun doing what it always does, rising whether anyone deserves it or not. I typed back slowly. Me, already started. Sent. I stood there for a second longer, coffee steam curling around my face, the warmth sinking into my fingertips like a promise. Then I whispered it, not to anyone, not for effect, not for drama. Just to the sidewalk, just to myself. They thought I was just the architect, a beat, but I was always the foundation. Big thanks, you legends of the old office days. Subscribe to keep the switch-flicking chaos alive. Your ex-boss is shaking in their loafers.